This is the third lecture of our series of this particular subject, robotic process automation. Before this lecture, we have in previous two lectures, we have already discussed the basics of RPA, and second one is the control statements or the control structures or the decision structures. Now, in this particular lecture, we will discuss variables and arguments, process and flowcharts. In previous lectures, many things that we have discussed, you can use if statements, switch statements, you can write that activity onto the search bar and drag and drop that activity, but there is no activity, there is no framework at all over there. You are maybe you all are uh, in trouble that what is to be written over there, where it is to be written, and when it is to be drag and drop, and from where to where. There are so many things that you can face such types of problems that teacher is telling us many things, but where all these things will be will find. Okay, so for that I have taken the snapshots of the activities and that particular framework. Now here I am going to tell you each and everything in detail. We are not waiting for to start for the second unit. I am simply telling you about that particular framework, or where you will write the activity name onto the search bar. Okay, let's start our lecture. In this particular lecture, I have already told you, we have already discussed the activities, decision activities or the decision statements or the constraints. Okay, in today's lecture, we will start from these variables and arguments, and then we'll start the process and the flowchart. Variables, you all are familiar with these variables and arguments. Listen, I have already told you so many times that if you are familiar with any kind of programming language, or you are having 0.5%, you are in the position to understand 0.5 or 10%, 0.5 to 10% of the programming constructs. This is the same as that of you have already studied in the previous semesters. Okay, what is variable? You all know, you all are familiar with what is variable. What is argument? You all are familiar with the arguments. But what is variable? What I am telling you, no issue, don't worry. But in this particular scenario, for example, second point is process. What is process? It is nothing but a set of statements. You can say that for a particular work, for a particular task, if you are going to process, if you are going to design a particular workflow, that is what the process is. Next is flowchart. We have already discussed in previous lecture, if you are going to design any kind of workflow, you can take out of three one thing. First one is sequence, second one is flowchart, and third one is your state machine, or you can say that finite state machine, FSM. Here we will discuss process and flowchart. So start one first from first, that is variable. Variable may be defined as the symbolic name associated with a value that may change. You all are familiar with this particular definition. Symbolic name associated with a value that can be changed or that may be changed. But in UiPath, variables are of different types and are used to store multiple types of data ranging from generic value, text, number, data table, and time and date. One important use of variable is that we can control the number of times the body of a loop is executed, because the value of the variable can change. Okay, I think there is no new thing that you have learned in this particular topic, that is variable. You are familiar with the term what is variable. Okay, symbolic name associated with a value that can be changed. Okay, in UiPath, variables are of different types that can store multiple types of data ranging from, we have already discussed. This is what the variable panel is. So first of all, I am going to tell you, this is the snapshot of your UiPath Studio Community Edition. While you will install the UiPath Studio Community Edition in your system or in your laptop, when you start this particular studio, this will comes first. This is the activity panel that we have already studied in previous lecture. This is the activity panel. All the activities comes under this particular thing. This one is your search bar. Any activity, like we have discussed, if activity, switch activity, every activity you will search over here. If you need if activity, you simply write if and double click or press the enter. If activity will appear over here. Okay, this is your work area where you will drag from this activity panel to this particular area. This is your property panel. If you want to change the property of any variable, any kind of things, you can use this particular property area. Okay, in the above snapshots, this particular thing, 4 fields of a particular variable will be associated with. First of all, the name of the variable. Second one is variable type. What is the type of the variable? And third one is the scope of the variable. And fourth one is the default value. You can create n number of variables in this particular pan. Okay, this is all about the variable panel. Okay, I have already told you, you can use either sequence or flowchart or finite state machine. You have already used the sequence of this particular scenario or the workflow. You don't know what kind of workflow you are going to generate over here, but you simply say that this will be the sequence. Okay, from where it is to be coming, it is to be arrived, you simply write sequence in the search bar, and that particular sequence will drag from this activity panel to the work area. This is all about the variable panel. 4 fields we have already discussed: name, variable type, scope, and default value. The name is the mandatory field. Okay, you must give the name to the variable. Suppose if you are not giving any name, then UiPath Studio will generate one automatically. It is recommended that we follow naming convention. Okay, this is the mandatory field. Next is variable type. Variable type is, again, it is also the mandatory field. You choose the type of variable. We can choose among the options like we have already discussed, from generic text, generic to their boolean variable, int32, object, generic value, array of t, browse of type from the property panel itself. If you do not choose any type, then by default your UiPath Studio will consider it as a string. It depends upon you what kind of data type you are required for the particular variable. Next is scope. It is also the mandatory field. Except default, all the fields will be the mandatory fields for the variable. Name must be there. Without name, you can't use variable. Okay. In the same way, this is your scope. It is a mandatory field again, which shows the area in which the variable is available. For example, if you choose the activity type sequence, then the scope of the variable would be sequence, and so on. Default, this is the optional field which shows the default value of a variable. For example, default value of a variable type int32 is 0. This is all about the variable panel. We have discussed what is variable, discussed these 4 fields of the variable and how we can use this variable, where it is to be created into the workflow. We have already discussed. Next is the types of variable: text variable, boolean variable, integer variable, array variable, and data type variable, data table variable. These are the types of variable. Okay, now I am just leaving this thing, just wants to tell you what is the type of variable. Okay, next we will discuss this argument panel. Okay, as we have studied the variable, we will study this argument panel. Argument resembling variables are used to pass data from one workflow to the another. They can store data dynamically and pass it on. One difference between variable and argument is that, listen, variable pass data to other activities while argument pass data to the another workflow. Listen again. The difference between the variable and argument is that variable pass data to the other activities, but your workflow pass your data to the another workflow. One workflow to the another workflow. Variable pass the data from one activity to the another activity. Okay. UiPath Studio argument are of different types, hence we can create different types of argument like generic value, text number, data table, objects, and boolean. Okay, arguments have specific directions that tells the application where the information stored is supposed to. The argument can be of many properties like in and out properties, in properties, out properties, in and out properties, and these are the four types of properties. This is what the argument panel. The image is not so clear over here, but it is same as that of the we have discussed in the variable panel. This is the same, but this is if you have this particular scenario in this over here, this is variable, next one is argument. Now it is to be selected argument. Okay, difference I have already told you. If you want to transfer the value from one activity to another activity, variable will be used. If you want to transfer something from one workflow to the another workflow, that will be the argument. Argument panel is used to create argument and enables us to make changes to them. This is the following screenshot gives an insights about the argument panel. These are the four fields, name fields. Okay, this is the direction field. Direction is in, out, in and out. I have already told you. In, the direction means the argument can only be used within the given workflow. Out means this direction means the argument can be used to pass data outside the given workflow. In and out means direction means the argument can be used in as well as the out into the given workflow. And the fourth one will be the property. The direction is not in use currently. This is the four fields in argument panel: in, out, in and out, and fourth property will be the property itself. The direction is not in use currently. Next is argument type. Argument type, again it is of mandatory field which enables us to choose the types of argument. Again, what are the options? Boolean, int32, string, object, generic value, array of t, browse of type, and from the property panel itself. If you do not choose any type, UiPath Studio will consider it as a string. As we have seen in the variable panel, if there is nothing is to be set into the type of the argument, into the types of the variable, default UiPath will take it as a string. In the same way, or likely you can say that UiPath Studio will consider this argument is also consider it as a string if you are not choose any type of the argument. Now default, again as that of the variable, your argument will also be the optional field which shows the default value. Okay, this is all about the argument panel. Next one is process and flowchart. We have already discussed the process is what? The set of instructions with the help of which our workflow or our process will be designed, or the set of instructions with the help of which a particular thing is to be designed to perform a particular task, that is known as process. I have not write that definition of process in my slides. We simply starts from the flowcharts. Okay, this is one of the important workflow you can use. We have already discussed sequence, flowcharts, and finite state machine many times in previous lectures as well as in this lecture. But I am telling you the difference between these three. If there is a simple project or a small project, you can use the sequence activity. If there is a medium or complex process, you can use a flowchart. If there is a most complex process, or you can say that some most complex business process you are going to design, you will use the finite state machine or state machine. We are discussing flowchart in this particular lecture. Flowchart is a graphical representation of a process. Don't confuse, sir. You have already told what is process. Process is nothing but a set of instructions. Where those set of instructions is to be written, either you will write those instructions into the sequence or into the flowchart, or if you are using finite state machine, you will write those instructions into the state machine. That is known as the process. Same here. Flowchart is a graphical representation of a process in which each step is represented by different symbols connected with arrows. What we have discussed, Flowchart is a graphical representation of a process. Means process is nothing but what? This is the graphical representation in which each step is represented by different symbols connected with arrows. Okay. One of the best layout of the UI path. I have already told you about these three. Flowchart is one of the best among the three layouts diagram of UI path workflow because it is flexible and tend to lay out a workflow in two-dimensional manner. This can showcase decision points within a process very efficiently owing to their visual appeals. This is all about the process and flowchart. Next is, this is the example of your flowchart. This start point, if you find this particular thing, this start, that means this will be your flowchart. In sequence, this will not be appeared, it will not be visualized. Sequence means simply a box is there, you can insert or you can drag and drop any number of activities into that sequence. Okay, and sequentially all the activities will be executed as you have drag and drop those into the manner. Okay, in the same way, this is what the flow chart is. A flow chart is generally used for complex business process. I have already told you, medium process or complex, but not more complex, medium complex process or moderate process, but complex business process, you can use the flow chart. It provides decision making facility and can be used for both small as well as the large projects. This is all about the snapshot of your flow chart. What kind of flow charts you will use? You have already familiar with these types of flow chart, right? Next is how to use flowchart. Let's drag and drop a message box. You simply search the message box into the search bar, drag that into this particular work area and simply write message box, double click to view. When you will double click over here, after that a message or a screen will appear. You can write any message like hello, how are you? I am fine, thank you. Any kind of message you can give over there. So this is all about the flowchart. Okay, a message box and type in the area where text is to be quoted. I have already written over here. You can read it from here. Then press F5 to see the results. When you will press the F5, the result will be what you have written into the message box. For example, I have written my name is Tarun Sharma. When I will click F5, the resultant will be at a particular screen. The message will be my name is Tarun Sharma. Okay. Next, the references is the same as we have already discussed in the previous lectures. You can use this textbooks as well as the reference books, and you can use this online material, that is academy.uipath.com, because your RPA, there are many vendors that are working in this particular RPA like Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, this UI path. We are using the UI path. We are using the framework of UI path to design our workflows. So in that case, you can use academy.uipath.com. Thank you so much. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Thank you.